Hello everybody and welcome back to Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. And today I have a video all about a very special plant that I have done videos on before, where I have staked up my plant and wanted it to grow up nice and tall and look beautiful and flush out long big leaves. But that's not what's happened. So I've been in and I've changed it up with that plant. I've repotted it into a terracotta pot and decided to make it into a hanging plant instead. And the plant that I'm going to be concentrating on today is the one over in the corner here behind my moss agate skull here. That is my Scindapsus treubii Moonlight. And it is hanging down on the side of this cabinet, almost down to the floor, and it was much longer than this. This has been more than halved because the top part of the plant started thinning out, growing smaller leaves, and it had long areas where the leaves weren't growing out at all. And that is because the higher up it got, the less light it got, because the lights I have in my room are on lamps or on the floor, because I don't have holes in the ceiling here with lamps facing down, which is what I really need. So when some of these vining plants try to reach up to the ceiling and it gets darker, then they leg out and get smaller leaves, and it actually doesn't work in my indoor terrace garden here. So I went in and I pruned it back to more than half and kept all the lovely leaves that are near the bottom and the middle of the plant, and now it's a beautiful cascading plant here, and I'm really happy about the way it looks. I did this a couple of weeks ago, so the leaves are still facing round backwards as they hang down, but they will turn themselves around and they will face the light, the lamps that are above the plant with time. And the top part is facing towards the lamp and is even growing out new leaves already. So I'm very happy that this plant transplanted into this terracotta pot in new soil, and it's very, very happy. So just to give you a closer look of what the plant looks like, I have a little cutting here. There are actually two that I took a while ago, and I've shown these in another video as well. They're still doing really, really well for me. Growing slowly, but they have produced new leaves. This one at the end here is a whole new leaf. So I'm going to bring this in closer so you can have a look at these wonderful leaves closer up. So here we go. Look at this beautiful cutting of mine, of my Scindapsus treubii Moonlight. Lovely new leaves. That's the new leaf. There's another one coming out at the back here, and the other vine also has new leaves, and everything is looking fresh and healthy. Look at this closer up. Isn't it just gorgeous? The silvery leaves, the dark green veining in the middle, fresh and healthy. I absolutely love it. And this just goes to show that you can take cuttings from this plant like any other vining plant, and you can produce yourself another new lovely plant like this. And this has plenty of nodes on it. I'm not going to be going in and doing anything else with this plant. I absolutely love it. I like that it's growing slowly because then I can keep this beautiful effect up on my shelf behind our sofa and have a look at it there, as well as hanging down behind me over here. So this is just a beautiful example of what you can do. And I did this straight into soil. And what I would suggest, I found out that works very well with my Scindapsus plants when I want to do propagations, is I put them straight into soil, preferably in a terracotta pot, but I did this a while ago. It's in a plastic pot, in this cover pot, but preferably in a terracotta pot, in soil, in a plastic bag, somewhere under a grow light, and it will produce roots very quickly and start growing out for you. Then I would suggest the next phase is not to take it directly out of the bag and onto the windowsill or wherever you're going to put it when it started growing roots and producing new leaves. I've tried that and the plants have done fine, but it's a slower process of getting used to that lovely humid environment it's been in into a room that is much less humid, and it will dry out quicker. You will have to water them quite a lot, especially in a terracotta pot. So I would suggest when you first want to take them out, you open the bag, leave the bag open, leave the pot in the bag open for a while around the plant, let it get used to that, and then fold back the bag, and then you can take it out, and then your plant will be more used to the environment that it's going to be in after. But remember, a terracotta pot, it will need a lot more watering. In a plastic pot, you don't need to water these plants very often. I water this plant once a week or maybe more than that, and it is doing absolutely fine. It usually tells you when it needs watering. It will get a little bit saggy, but overwatering these plants is worse than underwatering because they will rot out and die. So do not kill your plants with kindness. This one has done so well for me. And the soil I used, I think, was a normal potting mix, but I added a little bit of fine sand, I added a biochar, and I think that was about it really, just to keep the soil a little bit looser. You can add leckables, you can add perlite, you can add all sorts of things to amend your soil. The only thing you do not want to do is just put this plant into a potting mix and that's it, because it will be very dry and compact very quickly, and when it's wet it will hold moisture way too long so that the roots start rotting out. So you do need to make a mixture of a soil for your plants. Always look online and get good ideas from different sources about the soil, but it's not that difficult. Really, if you only have perlite and soil at home, mix that together. It will air out the soil better than nothing. If you have sand and soil, use that, but not too much sand, just enough to make sure the soil stays airy and that it doesn't hold on to moisture so that the soil stays soggy. They really do not like overwatering. So have another closer look at this plant, because that's what this video is all about, the beautiful Scindapsus treubii Moonlight. And now I want to take you in for a closer look of the mother plant, the main plant of this video today, so you can see how she's looking and see how transplanting the plant won't be detrimental if you're very careful. But otherwise, when you go out and buy these plants, I do not suggest that you go and repot the plant straight away if you really don't have to. Give your plant a good period of a few weeks at least to acclimatize to your environment, and then if you can repot without having to mess around with the roots too much, then that will be fine. But if you do, well, you could end up upsetting your plant and it could take a longer time to establish before it starts even growing anymore, or it might need to readjust its roots because they've been damaged and grow out roots before it starts growing out leaves and so forth. So there's a lot of things to think about, but basically don't overthink it. If you have enough of the plant, you can go and experiment, of course. I love experimenting with my plants. I've tried all sorts of different methods to see what works. And, well, this plant behind me, I repotted as soon as I got it home. I messed around with the roots. I put it into different pots a few times. I've staked it up. I've taken it down. I've cut it back. I've put it in a terracotta pot. I've done all sorts to that plant. And it survived, and it's still looking wonderful. So I just want to show you that you can do these things, but you just need to be careful. If you're somewhere where you can't get hold of this plant very easily, if it's a rare plant where you live, then be careful. Leave it in its same pot. Don't disturb it. Just love it as it is. Okay? So, anyway, let's go in and take a closer look at the mother plant. So now let's have a look at these beautiful leaves on this beautiful plant close up. I have had this plant some time now, and you really need to go back and see the videos of me doing all sorts with this plant. But now it's like this. It's become a hanging plant, and it has these lovely big leaves on the top, and you can see all the lovely new leaves that are starting to pop out already after just a couple of weeks in its new terracotta pot. And then we go down and see the leaves that are still facing backwards at the moment, but they will face forward and up towards the light with time. So I'm not worried about that at all. And all of these stems that were around halfway up the totem, the total length, and you can see here at the bottom actually how thin it got with leaves, hence cutting the very top part off. And then as we go up again, you can see the beautiful leaves and how they're looking. And now this plant is much closer to these lamps here, and I think it's going to fill out and bush out nicely on top, and then send down some more vines,
so that it thickens out and becomes even bushier. But look at these beautiful leaves. And even in this light, which isn't clear white light, you can still see the silver colour on the top of the leaves and this dark green veining in the middle and around the margins of the leaves. They're just stunning, and they're very thick leaves. They're very nice to touch and look at and enjoy for all their beauty. And as I said just before, all of these smaller new leaves that are coming up just shows that this plant is happy and thriving in its new position here and looking good. So I'm really happy that I went in and sorted it out when I did. Now, I want to give you a kind of mini tour of the other plants that I have round and about next to my Scindapsus treubii Moonlight. And nearly all of these plants have a tag in them. So I will show you the tag as we go around. So I won't be putting the names up on the screen myself. You can read all the tags in the plants. But look how beautiful they are. And I've had all of these plants a couple of years now. So even with the lower light condition in my apartment and the lighting that I have, these kinds of plants survive very well. So I have a lot of different varieties of Dracaena plants now, Synonym sansevieria. But I also have other plants, and you can see this one I'm showing you at the back here now with the bulbous bottom. Actually is a sun-loving plant, but it's doing well under the lamp and has for a while. And this was my rescue sansevieria that was completely soaking wet when I bought it and rotted out in the bottom, but still survived and looks beautiful. And I love it the way it is, as well as all the others. Look at the coloration on this one. It's just amazing, very different. A plant that I've had for a while. It hasn't grown anything really, but it hasn't deteriorated. It's absolutely beautiful. And then this plant here that's throwing off lots of small pups for me, which is wonderful because this is a more rarer type of Dracaena to find. So now I have two smaller ones coming up in the pot, and as long as they have space, I'll leave them there. And if one day they don't, well, then I can repot them. But I'm very happy to have a few more of them. And then this lovely little Dracaena here, the top leaf I actually snapped off and put into a pot of its own, and it's grown a little plant of its own. So now I have two of these. So that just shows you how easy it is to do leaf propagations from your Dracaena plants. And then this one down here has this lovely silvery colour on the leaves. Gorgeous plant. And then who doesn't like a Hoya or two? So I have quite a few Hoyas around and about as well, and they seem to cope with the light conditions. I have most of my Hoyas close to windows or under lamps. Even in dark areas, the lamps keep them happy. Here's the little leaf from my other Dracaena I just told you about, and then I have lots of other ones down here as well. I love that there are so many different leaf shapes and lengths and widths, colorations and styles. Endless. And that is just wonderful for me because, well, I can just carry on collecting wonderful Dracaena, sansevierias, and all these other plants. Scindapsus, they cope well in low, medium light conditions if they have lamps around them as well. And then my largest of all of my Dracaenas at the back there, and then my beautiful plants growing in the pot underneath other plants. I love that kind of style. I need to do more pots like this, especially when there are larger pots. It's nice to have something growing in the bottom so you don't look at soil and then a long trunk before you get the leaves at the top. It's nice to have combinations and combinations of different plants that do fine together. And these two plants, like I said, have been in this pot together for quite some time. And the Epipremnum aureum Marble Queen has actually been a very slow grower, so it's only just started thickening out this year, actually. But I have lots and lots of different things mixed together in this corner of my indoor terrace garden. And this is still just a small amount of all the plants that I have around and about in here. And I do like the jungle effect, but as I said, it means lots of pests. But not this corner. These plants really aren't so prone to pests indoors, at least here where I am in Sweden. So I'm very happy that I've, with time, figured out the kinds of plants that I can have here, rather than just going out and buying anything and everything that I can find and things on sale and hoping for the best, and then they work for a couple of months and then they wither away. I'd rather have plants that I can keep for years and years and have memories with and can repot and divide and all sorts as they grow. I think that's so much fun. But now and again, if one loves to look at the plant and wants to bring it home, well, we'll have to just see how it goes.
So I really hope you enjoyed seeing my mother plant, my Scindapsus treubii Moonlight, closer up. And I really hope you enjoyed that I ended up going off and giving you a little mini tour of some of the plants in my indoor terrace garden here. I've had a bit of a shuffle around actually, and this corner had our TV in it, and we've moved our TV to the back of the room now. And now this corner has lamps, both sides of my plants here, 3 lamps on each. LED lamps. They're not special grow lights because I couldn't get special grow lights with the smaller end to fit into these right now. So I have LED lights, and they are actually doing the job of keeping these plants happy enough. These are plants that can cope with low light conditions, and that is what I have been looking for in my indoor terrace garden here, because the lighting isn't all that great. It's a lot of artificial light and not very much natural light coming into here. So I have ended up finding plants that cope with this, and that is why you see I have a lot of Dracaena plants, Synonym, Sansevieria, and the Scindapsus plants work out, and the Hoya plants seem to cope with it okay. I even have a cactus, it's under lights, it's doing well, but that had a period where it was in an area where it had low light, so it has a thin middle trunk. And then I put it back under light, and it's grown out the same width as the bottom of the plant. So it's grown into a kind of pattern with a thick bottom, a thin middle, and a thick top area. It looks quite funny, and I like that plant. I've had it many years now. Well, yes, I have some cactus varieties, and they're by the window and they're alight. And I also showed you I have Epipremnums here, and these other variety of Dracaena fragrans, and the ZZ plants, of course, Samiococcus, Samiofolia. All these plants do well in low light conditions, but they still need light, and hence lamps around and some grow lights I have on the ground with this reddy pink glow. This is all helping these plants to stay happy and healthy. This is just one small corner of my indoor terrace garden. This video wasn't a tour video today. It was only about my Scindapsus treubii Moonlight, but it ended up being a little mini tour as well, and with some of my beautiful crystal skulls and some of my crystals in my pots around and about them as well. This is what I love. This is what gives me joy. I am so thankful that I can share this with you as well. So, care tips for the plant. not that much fuss, as I said. It does need some light. Of course, the best thing would be bright indirect light, because then you will get this plant to grow much faster for you, and it will grow some pretty big leaves. My mother plant you saw there has some quite big leaves on it, and I'm really pleased about that. Soil conditions I spoke about earlier. Watering, let it dry out between waterings. It doesn't need watering, over watering. The leaves will crumple together when it needs water, and you can go in and water just before it gets to that phase. But if you do see that, then you definitely know your plant needs water, and I would get in and give it a good soak through. Terracotta is a better pot to have, because then you know if you soak through your plant, it will be able to evaporate and your plant won't be sitting in water too long. Plastic pots, if you soak your plant too much and it's sitting in water, it will rot. So please be careful with the plastic and the cover pots, the cash poles that you put your plants in. Spray over the leaves, dust over the leaves to keep them healthy and shiny. I haven't done that lately. This needs a bit of a shine off. But other than that, really, room temperature, normal room temperature, and these plants are absolutely fine. I can see on my thermometer I have at the side here, the humidity is at 50% in this room at the moment. And now, as I said, I've kind of filtered out my plants to plants that can cope with low light. And these plants also don't need a huge high humidity either. Normal room temperature between 45 and 65% humidity is absolutely fine for these plants. So all I have to say now is go out there, if you haven't already got yourself a Scindapsus treubii Moonlight, and get yourself one, because they are absolutely beautiful plants and very forgiving, very thankful, and easy to care for plants for the most part. The only thing I will say is that my mother plant was smothered in mealy bugs. The higher it got up on the stem in the darkness where the plant became weak, all of the node areas and the new baby roots that were coming out on the side were smothered in mealy bugs, and the plant couldn't cope with that. So all of that has been cut off. This plant was washed thoroughly over, showered over, wiped over, showered over, and sprayed with neem oil, and it is completely free of mealy bugs now. And now it's placed next to plants that don't get bugs on them easy. None of my Dracaena plants, Sydenham Sansevierias, have had any kind of problems with bugs since they've lived with me here. So this plant being next to them, I know it's not going to get mealy bugs and all other kinds of bugs on it. Again, it's going to be much safer here, and it should do really, really well. This little cutting I have here has never had any bugs on it, and that's because it's up on a shelf where I only had Sansevierias, and right now I have a Hoya next to it, and that Hoya actually hasn't had any bugs on it because it's been on its own or next to Sansevierias. So that is a suggestion for you. Really think about the plants that you put around your more sensitive plants that are more prone to bugs. Put them closer to plants that aren't so prone to bugs if you want to have this kind of jungle effect that I have behind me here. But if you're going to put this plant in amongst things like Opertia, Calatheas, or Syngoniums and all sorts of things that get thrips and get spider mites and all sorts of things like that, then well, it's going to spread to all of your plants, and that's what I've found. So with all that said, all I have to say now is thank you very much once again for watching Gardens and Crystals with me, Wesley Peterson. Please remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when my next video will be coming up, and I will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye!